Welcome to the 2021 Fanfare Launch into Cyberspace. Normally, you'd be visiting the High School of Art and Design's gymnasium, cafeteria, and other spaces around the building to interact and learn about the incredible creations of our young professionals, other creators and innovators in the community. You'd be seeing portfolio reviews. You would be involved in special seminars and workshops. You'd be seeing exciting contests and drawathons. Again, that would have been during a normal school year. The incredible challenges of the pandemic have forced our amazing PTA to take Fanfare and bring it online. So this is our first and hopefully only virtual Fanfare event. And with that said, we still have the vast majority of incredible experiences and learning opportunities for you to be a part of. We're incredibly proud of what our PTA and larger school community have put together and can't wait for you to join us throughout today and the next few days as each one offers unique and special events. Be safe, be well, most importantly, enjoy yourselves and be part of our community.
Thanks.
This is our thank you guys for sticking around. This is our last panel. It's going to be super cool. It's about creating a dynamic layout. Watch the pros at the Kubert School take a concept from sketch to final page. And now I'm going to bring on our moderator, Ramon Gill. Did I say that right? Did I get your name right? I think. Oh, you're muted. But
yeah, he got it right, Ramon Gill.
That's fine. Perfect, great. I've been and you can introduce our guests, and I'm going to leave it up to you, man. Enjoy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ramon Gill. I am a comic book writer, artist. I teach at FIT, and I also run something called the Comic Arts Workshop. Our guest today is Fernando Ruiz, who is an illustrator, and he also teaches at the Joe Kubert School of Cartooning. Is that right, Fernando?
Well, we just call it the Kubert School, but I guess officially it's the Joe Kubert School of Cartoon and Graphic Art.
Right, and Fernando and I did something similar to this about 2 years ago, right, with Anthony.
Yeah.
But today it's just Fernando and I, and Fernando's going to give us a great demo on how to make a dynamic comic book layout. But before that, I just wanted to ask Fernando a few questions about his work. So, Fernando, how'd you get started in comics?
Well, I was always a comic fan. You know, I love comics from when I was a little kid. I love cartoons. I love comics. So, and I was always, for as long as I could remember, I was drawing. After high school, I went to college, and I went to a regular college because I knew I wanted to do something in art, but I wasn't sure if you could make a living doing comics. Mm-hmm. You know, so I went to college and I studied fine art, and what I wanted to do then was to be a painter. You know, I wanted to paint landscapes and be like a gallery artist, which is probably an even crazier living than trying to make it as a comic book artist.
That's debatable.
yeah, I'm sure. But you know, when I graduated from there, I still had the interest in comics, and I really did want to give that a serious shot, you know. So I went to the Kubert School where I'm teaching now. I went there, you know, as a student. And one of the great things about the school is its relationship with all the different comic book companies. So every year the school brings in all of the different companies to review the students' portfolios. So, and of course, you know, at the school, we have all different comic book professionals as teachers. So, you know, you get to experience a lot of different comic book characters in your homework, you know, so you get to draw like Batman, Spider-Man for your homework. And one of the projects that I had gotten to do was Archie, you know, from Archie Comics. So Archie was one of the companies that came to the school, and they looked at my portfolio. They liked the pages that I had done. So I was very lucky in that they hired me right out of there. So I graduated, and 2 weeks later, I started writing and drawing regularly for Archie Comics.
Writing too, wow.
Yeah. Well, I started out drawing, but very quickly my editor, Victor Gorelick, who sadly passed away last year, um, he was very encouraging. He right away he said, if you got any stories, we need stories. So I said, oh, I always like to write. So I made some scripts and sent them in, and he liked them, luckily, which made things easier for me because anything I felt like drawing, I could just write a story about. Because luckily, if he bought one of my scripts, he usually just turned right around and gave it back to me to draw. So that's and that was fun for me.
Got it. And how did you end up teaching at the Kubert School? Just because you knew everybody already?
Well, I think that was a big part of it. At the school we have kind of it's a pretty tight community. The students, the teachers, the graduates, everybody knows each other, and everybody's like one person away from everybody else in the industry. So I was away from the school for a year, and that year all I was doing was writing and drawing for Archie. And the great Mike Chen, who is in charge of all the teachers at the school, and he'd been one of my teachers. Mike, they needed somebody to teach the Saturday class. Now, the Kubert School, they have Saturday morning classes. It's really open to all ages, but it's largely for little kids, ages 10 and up. So they needed somebody to teach that, and that was my first teaching gig at the Kubert School, and I ended up teaching that class for 19 years. I think I have the record. I'm not sure. I think I may have the record. But a year after starting the Saturday class, and I knew this was coming. I knew sooner or later they'd get me. Mike Chen said, well, we need somebody to teach in the regular curriculum. And I was all for it. So I said, sure. So I started there, and I've been teaching there now for, this is my 26th year.
Wow. So you're one of the more long-lasting faculty there, I would assume.
Yeah. I never thought it would be that way, but one day it just happened. After a while, some teachers came and went. I always stayed. And now I think I might be like the third or fourth most veteran teacher there at the school, which blows my mind. I'm used to being the kid at every place. I was the rookie at Archie for 22 years. I felt like the rookie at the school for many, many years.
Did you get to learn under Joe Kubert himself?
Yeah. When I was a student, Joe was still teaching there. By the time I was a student, Joe had cut back to just teaching the third year. So I learned in my final year from Joe. And the thing about Joe is he was always at the school. His own studio, his own personal studio was at the school. So he was there every day. And he was totally, his door was always open. Anyone
Nice.
could walk in and get their pages looked at, and he loved doing that. He really, and that's where he really shined too, is when you got him one-on-one, and he would throw down the tracing paper over your page. This was long before digital. He would throw the tracing paper down over your page, and he'd break out a Sharpie or something, and on the tracing paper, he would he would show you how you're going wrong. And I say this like it was a long time ago, but I was using tracing paper myself up until like 2 years ago. So it wasn't that antiquated of a tool.
Wait, so what are you using now if not tracing paper?
Well, I still, believe me, my work, I still do everything on paper. But nowadays, of course, with everything going on, there's a much stronger digital component to teaching. So at the Kubert School, every teacher has a Cintiq on his desk. So a lot of times, I'm doing corrections on the Cintiq rather than, having a student come up to my table and I throw tracing paper on his page. Now I could just call up his page digitally and, on the Cintiq, make corrections, make changes, things like that.
Okay,
There's Theo.
one last question before we get into the demo.
Mhm.
Do you have any advice for anybody who wants to follow in your career path?
Well, two things really. Number one, and you're going to hear this really with any art industry. Number one is to keep drawing, and that sounds like the easy answer, but in all honesty, I always say I teach a lot of basic drawing classes at the Kubert School, and I always tell my students that art is very much a physical skill. We tend not to think of it as a physical skill because there is such a mental component to it, but it is a physical skill, and you have to, and as such, you have to exercise it. And if you don't, you lose it. You could listen to me in my classes all day long. You could hear me talk, but unless you practice the things that I talk about or the things that I demonstrate, you're not going to improve. So, in fact, I always tell my students too, if you never took an art lesson in your life, but you just drew, you would get better. You would get better at it because you'll learn things on your own. You'll discover things. But of course, you're going to learn a lot more with formal instruction. The other thing that I would tell students and anyone who's interested in comics, and this may also seem kind of obvious, but I've learned not to take it for granted. If you're interested in comics, read comics. Find out what's out there. Look at what other artists are doing, and take a look at what other artists have done before. Be aware of the history of the medium that you're going into, because there's a lot that you could learn that way. There's a lot that you could teach yourself that way too.
Thanks so much. That's great advice. Hope you guys take that to heart. So anyways, let's get started. Today is about drawing dynamic layouts. So I'm going to leave it up to you, and I'm just going to ask you questions as I come up with them.
Yeah, please feel free to jump in. I'm just going to show a little bit about how I work, and like I alluded before, I'm still old school. I got paper. I work on paper. But really, even before I touch the paper, another one of the classes that I teach at the school is narrative art, and narrative art it's really your comic book making class, and that's where we cover the science of it, not just drawing, but being able to communicate with your drawings. Being able to get across an idea, and even more specifically a story, and making sure it's understood. And that's something that we sometimes take for granted, because really at the school, a lot of times I get students who, before coming to the school, they're pretty much drawing for themselves. They're just drawing for fun, and whatever they draw, they understand it because they come up with it, and the story's in their head. So of course, sure, it's crystal clear to them. But if somebody who doesn't have that story in their head, if somebody looks at just their drawing, they might not know what's going on. Makes total sense to the artist, but to somebody off the street looking at your drawing, they may not know. They may not know what's happening there. So in narrative art, that's what we talk about. And the two big things, old school paper, still, that's right. And I tell my students that too, and I tell them too, when the power goes out, you could still use paper. Paper still works. But I was saying in narrative art, the two main things that you want to that make for good narrative art is, number one, that it's clear, that it makes sense, And number two, that it's visually appealing. It's interesting. And that's where the dynamic layout comes in. So what I want to do, and, bear with me, we may have to do this old school a little bit, but I want to show you guys, and I hope you guys can make sense of this. This is a script. And now this is a script, and this is for a romance story that I'm currently illustrating. I'm in the middle of this. And I don't know if anybody has seen scripts formatted before, but this is pretty straightforward in how this is formatted. And if you could see up at the top, what we have over here, we have the title of the script. And underneath that, it's going to say page 1. The whole story is broken down page by page, okay? So it'll say page 1, and then it'll say, over here, well, note to the artist, here we go, panel 1. This is actually panels 1 through 4. So this, in this case, this isn't the best example to lead with, but in this case, what they're looking for is a montage. Now, a montage is, it's a single illustration made up of a lot of smaller illustrations. So it's kind of like a movie poster. So I'm actually gonna skip ahead to page 2, because page 2 is.
Was that a little thumbnail you had at the top of that page? Yeah,
I was gonna get to that. That's my process when I get the script, right? And I tell my students about this too. There's usually that initial read through, I'll just read the script. I read it all the way through just to find out what the story is. But then I'll read it again. And on the second read through, I'm reading with my pencil in my hand. And what I tend to do is I tend to scribble out. And I know this isn't going to make sense to anybody looking at this, but the important thing is it makes sense to me. I just scribble out ideas I have for the page layout, okay, for how the page should go. And this by no means is my final idea. Okay, this is just like the initial thought as I'm reading through for the second time the script. I'll scribble down ideas down here below. You may see, there we go. There's another layout idea, and also I don't know what those are. I think those are notes right on the script, but I'm always scribbling in the margin. So you may see like a grocery list or the phone numbers to a doctor, written in the margins of my pages. But those, so I do little scribbles like that as I'm reading. And you could see,
I noticed also you're using a SharpWriter pencil.
Yeah.
Do you use that to draw too?
Sometimes. This is sort of my workhorse pencil, usually for like note taking.
I buy them by the box. They're great because they erase easily.
Yeah.
If you buy a soft pencil like a B or something like that, it's a pain to erase them. But the number 2s, they come right off the paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And they've got the lead in there, and when you're done, you just chuck them.
No sharpening, exactly.
No sharpening, right. This is actually the pencil I do most of my drawing with. And this is an Alvin 0.5 millimeter with an HB lead in there. And it's a mechanical pencil that lets me stay nice and tight and precise in my drawing. And it's a refillable pencil. So, over here, you can pop off the lid, take out the eraser, and, that's where I drop in the leads. And I can put in whatever lead I want. My personal preference is HB because it's right in the middle. It's not too soft, not too hard. I always tell my students, because believe it or not, what kind of pencil do you use has become a very common question. I get that a lot, but I can understand it. But I tell my students, your choice of pencil is a very personal choice. There's no right or wrong here, and I'm never going to tell you in my classes, if you're not using a 0.5 HB, you're drawing wrong. No, it's whatever you're comfortable using and whatever gives you the best results. So I tell my students, get a bunch of different pencils, experiment, play, and you'll discover the ones that are best for you. And that'll be your Excalibur. That's the one you'll be using forever. This one is mine. So I also sometimes have a 0.7. No, I'm sorry, a 0.3, 0.03, which is a very fine nib. And I use that one for when I need to get in for really, really tight details. But mostly I do most of the stuff with this.
Do you ink your own stuff, Fernando?
Sometimes I'm actually doing that more and more. Just because a lot of publishers seem to want that, seem to require it. At Archie, I rarely inked at Archie. At Dynamite, I inked everything that I did. So it really depends on the client. Luckily, I can ink. So whatever they want, if they want me to ink it, I'll ink it. And if they want to find somebody else to ink it, I'm okay with that too. So, so this is the script. I read through, and I was getting into the format before. This is page 2, and if you notice, page 2 is broken down panel by panel. Okay, so there's panel 1, there's the description of everything in panel 1, and then it takes me into the dialogue of what the characters are saying, and then it starts again. Panel 2, description, dialogue, panel 3, description, dialogue, and so on. They do that for every panel on the page. So the panel number is set. Okay, so I know going into my page layout, I know I've got, okay, on this page, I've got to make use of 6 panels, 4 panels, 5 panels. That's determined by the writer. Okay, when you're working from a full script like this is what we call the full script, where everything is written out for you. The writer determines the number of panels on the page. Now, I always get asked, my students will always ask me, can we eliminate panels? Can we add panels? In my class, I tell them no, because I want them to be able to work within the parameters of not being able to do that. But in reality, in the professional situation, when you get a script like this, you read through. If you really have a really, really good idea it's different from what the script, you can't change the story. The story is set, but you may have an idea where instead of 6 panels, you could tell the story in 5. Or instead of 6, maybe if you had that 7th panel, you could do something really cool. You have to run it past the editor, see if he's okay with it. And sometimes the editor may upfront tell you, change it. Great. But you always need the editor is the boss. And you got to remember too, in comics, it's an assembly line process. You're not working alone. So, there's other people that are going to come behind you. Yeah, there's the inker, but there's also the letterer. And the letterer, he's going to be working from this very same script. So if the editor gets page 2, and page 2 says, the script for page 2 says there's 6 panels on here, and you've drawn 5, the letterer is going to say, what's going on here? The dialogue's already broken down panel by panel here. What's he going to do? So that's why that's the kind of stuff you need approval for. You need to clear it, and sometimes it's not a big deal. It always depends on the working situation and relationship that you have going. So that's really the script. And like I said, like I showed you before, as I read through the script, I'm scribbling out. Here's one where you could see a lot of little and you could tell in this case, I'm going through a few different versions. Like I said before, your initial, this is what we call a thumbnail sketch because it's tiny like your thumbnail, but they're quick, and these are just like your initial thoughts, your initial reactions. Your first idea is very rarely going to be your best. So what I do is I'll make a bunch of these. I'll make a few of them, and they're small, they're tiny, they're fast, so they don't take me a long time. So I'll keep noodling this until I hit that composition, that layout that I like, and then that's what I will blow up. Now, in the thumbnails, there's a lot that I need to think about. Okay, and mainly what I usually do is when I've read the script for a page, each page there's one thing that is the biggest thing happening on that page. Whatever your story is, whatever's going on, there's always one thing. Even if it's like a boring dialogue scene where it's just people talking to each other, there's always a moment on that page that is more important than every other moment on that page. And what I do is I will design the page around that. I'll pick that panel and I will design the whole page around that panel. So I have pages here from this very story. Let me see. I'll pick a good one. Okay. Here's one. This is kind of a fairly talky page, right? So it's pretty much a dialogue scene. And this story, by the way, I mentioned before, it's a dialogue. It's a romance story. It's set in the Revolutionary War, set in the American Revolution. So there was a lot of reference that I needed to do. I had to make it look like it takes place in the Revolutionary War. So and like I said, this is a dialogue scene. It's largely these guys talking to each other. But what I wanted to do, I really wanted to give importance to this panel because it was what we call the establishing shot. And an establishing shot is very important in a scene because it's usually that scene that lets the audience know where the scene is taking place. Is it indoors? Is it outdoors? Is it in an office? Is it on a battlefield? Is it in space? And it also shows what are the characters in that scene, okay? And where are they, which is important. So I really wanted to give the establishing shot really the most importance on the page. So I blew that up nice and large. And I also made it what we call an open panel. And an open panel is a panel really without borders. If you notice, every other panel on the page is contained within nice, neat panel borders, but that large one isn't. That large one goes all the way to the edge of the paper. So that's what we call an open panel. So anytime you introduce a panel that's different from all the others, it immediately becomes more important. So it's going to get more attention. So that's why I blew that one up. Let me see. Now this is page 1. And again, starts out, establishing that Revolutionary War period. I'm giving a lot of importance to this figure because he's the main character. So I wanted him to be, and he's really kind of the largest figure on the page. I'm also giving a lot of importance to the big kiss at the end of the page. That's a big moment. So I also gave that an open panel. You can see that has no borders around it. And I'm also using size. They're the largest. They're the biggest shapes on that page, or at least that area of the page. So they dominate. So that is, and these are all the choices that I'm thinking of when I'm doing those thumbnails. And actually, I'm looking at the back of the page here, and you can see, even on the back of the paper, I'll still be kicking around the thumbnails some more. And in fact, there's some thumbnails in there for other pages. Look, there's Robot Man from the Doom Patrol. And there's a perspective lesson that I was giving my students. So that was the beginning of the spiral staircase that I was teaching my students how to do. So yeah, there we go. Now here, this might be interesting to see. Here's a page that's in progress still. Okay. And you can see I like to bounce around the different panels. I don't just sit and draw one entire panel. In fact, what I like to do, I usually have a few pages going at a time too, rather than start, and just work through one single page. I do like to jump around. I find that keeps me faster, and it keeps me more productive. And one of the things that
Hey, Fernando, was that something you always did, or did you figure that out further in your career?
I think I figured that out in school when I was a student, and certainly when I was drawing for Archie, because I was doing a lot of work for Archie. Within a 1 week, I was doing at least 2 stories a week for Archie, and they were 2 5-page stories. And I wanted to get them in on time every single week. So what I found was that just working on multiple pages like that just kept me moving forward. And the worst thing that could happen when you're working is you're working and you come on this panel that just isn't coming together. It gives you a problem. Maybe there's a figure that looks off. Maybe you just can't get an arm to look right, and it totally paralyzes you. You're just totally stuck on this figure, and you're erasing and drawing it and erasing it again because it still stinks, and you erase it again, and the worst part about that is it just totally freezes your whole progress. You're not moving forward anymore. And I think that aggravates the problem even more. And I tell my students, when they hit a stumbling block like that, the best thing to do is to just stop, go and draw something else. And really 9 times out of 10, when I go back to that problem, it straightens itself out. It's like magically, that arm that you were wrestling with, all of a sudden, oh, it's like that, and so, I think a lot of it has to do with we just psych ourselves out. So yeah, here's one in progress, and you can see how I work. I gradually, like that female figure in this one panel. You can see how lightly and sketchy she is initially, but eventually I will tighten up and make them Inker ready. So this is the page that I'm currently working on, and you can see here too more thumbnail pages, thumbnail sketches. Now something else. Since we're talking specifically about dynamic panels, I always tell my students that every panel needs to be a roller coaster. One of the things that will make a panel dynamic is that there are what we call the quiet panels to contrast it. So yeah, like for example, you have scenes. Okay, here's a page, for example, where I'm not really rocking the boat too much. Okay, if you notice every panel on this page, this is what we call a 6-panel grid. And by that, I mean I'm taking the entire page and I'm just using a grid of 3 rows of 2 panels on each row. So it's giving me 6 panels. And the panels are all equal in size. Nothing really radical about each panel. Maybe over here in the Locket panel, this is what we call a partially open panel, because I kind of broke up the panel border a little bit, mostly to give some importance to the Locket. But this is largely a quiet scene where this girl is speaking with her mother. It's not like a big scene where mutants and ninjas are attacking,
I have to call attention, though, to the fact that despite that it is a quiet scene, there's a lot of stuff that you're doing to make it interesting. For example, the camera angles are changing from panel to panel, and the distance of the camera to the subjects are changing from panel to panel. You have close-up, extreme close-ups, and really wide shots. You have bird eye views. You have eye level. So, one of the things that you notice about people who are just beginning is that it's almost always like a profile or a frontal facial shot at eye level. But over here, even though it's a quiet scene, you're doing so many different things. Even it looks like you even have a Dutch angle in there. So,
I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah. So do not settle for just when you have a quiet scene. I think you shouldn't settle for just like typical. Every shot is the same size, the same angle. You should make it interesting like that.
It's absolutely true. Yeah. When I tell my students, and I do this as one of my assignments in my narrative class, I will give them a dialogue scene that they have to illustrate. And a lot of them right off the bat will go, that's boring. It's 2 people talking. I want to draw monsters and kaiju and, things like that. But, even a dialogue scene needs to be interesting. It needs to be interesting. And yeah, the way we make it interesting is with a lot of the stuff that you pointed out, a lot of those options. Moving the camera is extremely important. I always tell my students, even though there's a place for repetition, but repetition can be boring. If you're showing the same thing from panel to panel, that same angle, especially if it's like that straight on or that profile, that's boring. Yeah, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, when in the TV show The West Wing, when the director realized that most of the 90% of the show was talking, they came up with the idea that they're always walking through the hallways when they're talking.
Huh.
So if you watch the TV show, whenever they're talking, they're almost always walking the hallway, and the camera's like it's in front of them as they're walking down the hallway. So that's one way they made the conversations more interesting.
There you go. Yeah. And you could also use like camera angles to enhance the mood a little bit. For example, we have that final panel where the mother and the daughter are embracing. And I chose to, we look down on them. They look a little sadder, a little lonelier because we're also a little further away. And we see a lot more of the room all around them. And close-ups, especially extreme close-ups, yeah, they make things intense. They make things seem important and dramatic. There where the daughter's grabbing the mom in panel 3, there I went with a profile view, because even though profiles and straight-on views aren't the most exciting panels in the world, they still have their place. And like I said, if you have like a profile view like that, and you contrast it with, say, a down shot like this, or a bit of a tilted angle, and I you know, I said before, I love tilted angles because they could automatically, you know, you take a moment and you just kind of tilt it. The dullest moment in the world is made just that much more exciting because it's got that little bit of a tilt, a little bit of an energy to the panel. So that's always an arrow in my quiver. What else did I want to show you guys? Here's another panel where another page where I kind of use the 6-panel grid. I'm playing with some of the sizes of the panels, but then I do end with an open panel, totally open panel, because you know, I wanted to give importance to the guy with the gun walking off angry, throwing the locket back. The rest is the back and forth between all the characters.
So is this something you're gonna have to ink?
No, this is actually being inked by somebody else. Thank God, because there's I did go kind of background heavy. So you see all this stuff. Yeah, I'm glad to just draw it once and I'll let the inker hate me. Here are now here's something I've been doing just for fun on my social media. I do what I call Secret Origin Saturday, and sometimes it becomes Secret Origin Sunday if I'm running late. But what I do is I take a different comic book character, superhero usually, and I will tell their origin on one page. So this was the page I used last week, and this was the origin of Robin, the Boy Wonder. So
Nice.
What's that?
Nice.
Oh,
Very nice.
thank you. You can see I'm covering the whole story of you know, the first Robin, Dick Grayson. He was from a family of acrobats. He watched his parents die in a sabotaged acrobatic act. And then he's taken in by Bruce Wayne, who, of course, is Batman, who trains him to be Robin, his sidekick, the Boy Wonder. So I love doing these, mostly because I'm giving myself the one page. Well, largely because they're characters I enjoy. You know, it's stuff that I like to do. But I find it an interesting narrative exercise to get the whole story down in a single page. And you know, usually I'm building up to that final panel where I reveal the character in all his glory. This is one that I did for the Legion of Superheroes character, Lightning Lad. So there he is in the final panel, in a team shot with other Legionnaires, other members of the Legion of Superheroes.
Nice.
So these are fun for me. Oh, here's actually one that I am inking, and I'm in the middle of inking it now. And this was a private commission. Somebody requested this, and this is Jughead as a werewolf fighting Moon Knight.
Sweet.
And this one, you know, and you look at a single image like this, and this still requires, you know, composition. You know, it still requires everything that we've been talking about. So even here, even on the back, you could see I'm playing with the pose of Moon Knight, and this one actually has an interesting situation that came up in the middle of it. What I looked at for my inspiration for this one was the cover of Werewolf by Night number 32, which is the first appearance of Moon Knight. And you know, the person who ordered this is a Moon Knight fan, as am I. I love Moon Knight. So I thought, well, you want Moon Knight, let's do this homage. And I was really trying to, in the original cover, Moon Knight is in the foreground, really big. And I was really trying to do something, but it wasn't working. And sometimes when something isn't working, my impulse is, okay, if this composition isn't working, let me take the camera and just reverse it. So I switched it totally around. Rather than have Moon Knight large and big in the front, that's where I positioned the werewolf, and I pushed Moon Knight further back. And to me, it ended up working out better because the werewolf is nice and big. We're looking at Moon Knight instead of looking past Moon Knight. So to me, it just worked out better. And Moon Knight's big giant cape can cover the background.
Yeah, I saw that. Cool.
So that was a lot of fun. This is also an example of a splash page. And a splash page is what we call a page that has one big panel. Okay, it's just one big image. So this is Archie and Veronica, and behind them, Veronica is being stalked by the Predator. Everybody knows the Predator, right? Run for the chopper. So, even single images like this, there's a narrative component because there's a story being told here. I need to get across the story. I need to set things up. This is also the last page in this story, so it had to be a bit of a cliffhanger. And I needed to set up that situation that the Predator was following Veronica, and, he's on the verge of getting her. So, and actually here too, this is another little homage because Veronica shows up for the first time in this story, and she shows up at Archie's door. So what I did was I shamelessly stole from the great John Romita. This is the Spider-Man fans will know what I'm talking about. The first panel that ever introduces Mary Jane, where Mary Jane, Spider-Man's girlfriend, Mary Jane, meets Peter Parker, and she says, what is it? Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. So basically, I stole that whole composition with, Peter Parker, Archie in the Peter Parker spot, Veronica in the Mary Jane position, and then I just stuck in the Predator behind her. So there we go. That was easy.
And it's always like a dilemma for me when I'm drawing people, especially with is because I'm not up to date with fashion at all. So choosing their clothing for any given situation is always such a pain for me.
Oh, that was a big deal when I was doing Archie regularly. One of the big things that they really push at Archie is the fashions. Because Archie, believe it or not, takes place today. All the stories have to take place today. And it's not so important when you're drawing the guys, because really, guys' fashions really don't change all that much. But girls, yeah. With girls, their fashions will change from year to year to year. So, for a while, I had a subscription to 17 magazine. Just to keep me up to date.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
You should do that.
Yeah, and believe me, the subscription helped me from getting all the weird looks whenever I went to buy the magazine in person. All right, just send it to my house.
Years ago, I used to draw for Vortex, and it was all NASCAR autobiographies.
Oh boy!
I had a subscription to the NASCAR magazine. Same thing.
There you go. Yeah.
So, anyways, those are great. Is there anything else that people that aspiring artists can work on to make sure their panels are dynamic that we haven't mentioned already?
Well, the main thing is to keep challenging yourself, because it's very easy to kind of fall into patterns, to fall into your easy shots. One of the things that I always give to my students in my classes, and I'll recommend everyone watching this to look this up. Find Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work. That's a legendary sheet put together by the great Larry Hama of Marvel Comics.
That always confused me. Who did that, Larry or Wally? You know,
I get Wally put them on paper, but Larry Hama is the one who like really put it out there, I guess.
Okay.
Or I think Larry may have collected the 22 panels and
put it together. And
we got Larry to thank for that.
Right.
But you know, if you look at those, there are 22 very different panels. So I always give that out. I go through all the panels and I point out what's relevant about each one. And then I tell my students, okay, next time I give you a script, just shamelessly steal these panels. Just use them. And you know, eventually you make them your own.
Yep. Okay. I think we're almost out of time. We got 3 minutes left. I know you gave gave us advice on how to, you know, follow in your footsteps. But for my own workshops, I always ask our guest speakers this one question.
Sure.
What is one brutally honest piece of advice you would give to an aspiring creator? Brutally honest.
Brutally honest. You know, it's going to take a lot of work. You've got to commit. This is art in general. Forget comics, but art in general is not something you can just do kind of halfway. You know, you got to commit. You can't just dabble in it. You know, I can't just kind of dabble in playing professional baseball for the New York Yankees. You know, I can't wake up at my age, not having played baseball since I was a kid, and say, you know what, I'm going to play for the Yankees. No. If I want to play for the Yankees, I need to go back in time and go to a batting cage every day for 12 hours and swing at bats. So, you know, if you want to draw for professionally, not just in comics, but professionally, sit down and draw.
Thanks very
That
much,
was
Fernando.
awesome.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was great. I was letting you guys do your thing and listening in the background like a creep. That was awesome. So so cool. I just want to say one more time for anybody watching, if you can please go to fanfarenyc.com to donate. We'd really appreciate it. Or you can just text FFNYC to 44-321 and give us all your money, all of it, every single solitary drop you got. You're not using it. We're all still in a pandemic. Everyone's been getting free financial aid. We know where you live. Just give us the money. All right, cool. Well, thanks again, guys. And I guess we'll close this out and have a good time.
Thanks a lot.
Peace. Yep.
Thanks a lot, guys. This was fun.
Take care.
care.
Bye-bye.
So here we are. We're going to do a quick little, again, just a little slideshow and discuss why we're doing what we're doing. So
Yeah.
I'll get it started. And
It's been such an amazing weekend. The professionals that we've met through Fanfare have been extraordinary. They gave their time, and they made it possible to interact with our amazing students. This is a fundraiser, though. And so we really want to make sure that people who have enjoyed this content all weekend are really going through and making a donation to help our students. Our students are the best of the best. They are from every part of New York City, from the Bronx to Staten Island to Brooklyn, Queens, and they come to school in the heart of Manhattan. And they need our help. They need our help to get art supplies. That's a big, need that you don't think about. Everyone is not working digitally. And if they are working digitally, they need the next Wacom tablet, or they need the next application. And that's what the PTA funding can give to them. Oh, there's John. Hi, John.
Hello.
John.
Sorry about that.
No,
That's all
it's
right.
okay.
I'm so excited you were having a great time with the cosplayers.
Oh, they were so much fun. We could have talked for another like 2 hours. It would have been great.
And what was great too was one of those cosplayers was an alumni. And
Yes.
she was talking about how much the school meant to her and her ambitions. She is now a working illustrator in working with Nickelodeon on a project, I think, also working
Netflix.
Netflix. Thank you.
Yep.
And so that's the kind of student, these ambitious students who want to work in the creative fields. This is a great slide showing some items and what you can provide if you can donate today. A studio easel is something that any artist who works in on canvas can use.
The illustration folks,
That is expensive, and we would love to be able to provide that. And so, could you make a donation today of $125?
We have our guests here are going to be talking about comics, and there's like India ink, this special, the pens, there are all these little accoutrements that they all need in order to get the job done. So,
and you don't buy it once. I mean, you buy the easel once, but ink, paint, paper, you go through it. If you're in school and you have to be constantly creating, you're going through it, and so it's a constant need. And we want to be there for our students, the PTA.
You had a great story. I don't want you to.
Oh, yes. Well, I met with an illustrator, or it was an aspiring cartoonist. But he's in 9th grade. He's amazing. He was showing me an ink drawing, and it was this elaborate ink drawing with all this cross-hatching and everything on it. And he said, I couldn't finish it the way I wanted it to because I ran out of ink in this ink pen, which was like a special ink pen. And I just thought, wow, if that isn't a metaphor for what we're doing, let's keep that ink flowing. Let's let him realize the beautiful creation he was making, and let him be, the next cartooning star. And you can do it.
Yeah. Like as we were saying, even $1 helps. So anything helps. John, this is here. We rack this up. It's time for that radio voice.
Here we go, guys. If you can, please donate to fanfarenyc.com, or you can go and donate through a text message because we're super savvy like that. You can text FFNYC to 44-321. Give us all the money, everything you got in your wallet. Go through your kids' piggy banks. They don't need it yet. When they go to the the High School of Art and Design, then they can save up. But for now, give us what you got.
Yes. Go ahead.
I think there was one more slide that we were going to just talk about merchandise, because John had a T-shirt on that was very special the last few days. I think you had to wash it now. I understand.
That's funny. I actually did. I was like, I can't do it.
It was like the smellometer. There was no, you couldn't do it. But
2 days I had it.
But we know people are such fans of Fanfare, and we have some merchandise with our mascot on it, which was created by one of our students, Lang Mansunu. And I just want to make sure that everyone who wants to could buy it. It's on our website, fanfarenyc.com, and go there, buy whatever. They're great. I have a T-shirt. I'm excited. My daughter has a sweatshirt.
There's the mascot up in the top right.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So the all this merchandise is available through tomorrow, but then it's not available. So please do go and get yours today.
There's a gate. You gotta get there before the gate closes, and
exactly.
then we do want. It's still, if you go and you donate, certain amounts get you some of these merchandise too. Am I not right? I'm sorry.
No,
if
you're
I'm-
right. You're
Yes.
right. I think it is, if you donate $125, we will give you one of these awesome tote bags.
Look at that.
We also have little limited edition button packs. If you donate $50, we will give you a limited edition button pack. We don't have this pictured because it's not for sale. That's a special gift just for our friends who donate more than $50.
Mhm.
And if you donate $1,000, Joanne, myself, and Miguel will come to your house.
Oh, I thought you were
I-
going to throw in that dog
Yeah.
and the dog.
and the dog.
We're just giving stuff away.
Right.
Time, bodies.
We'll do it. I'll get on the call and talk to you. Talk you through that, writing that $1,000 check or making that donation. But
Talk me
One
through
more
it.
zero.
Thank you.
One more
That's
zero.
right. Exactly.
good.
Right.
Exactly. Thanks.